It was August 1835, and New York City was on fire, not literally, but with excitement. A small newspaper, The Sun, had just published the first in a series of articles that would set the city, and soon the country, buzzing. The headline, Great Astronomical Discoveries by Sir John Herschel at the Cape of Good Hope. Readers were promised never-before-seen wonders of the universe, discovered through a new, powerful telescope, and day by day, issue by issue, the Sun delivered crystal forests on the lunar surface, vast oceans, pyramid-shaped temples, and most shocking of all, intelligent life. These were not green men. No, the moon, we were told, was inhabited by winged bat-like humanoids called Vespertilio-homo. They were civilized, social, even a little sexy. By the end of the week, thousands believed it. The series went viral, 1830s style, reprinted across the world, read aloud in bars and churches, and debated as serious science. No one stopped to ask, wait, is this even remotely possible? In 1835, the Sun was a scrappy underdog in the New York newspaper scene. It wasn't highbrow like the New York Evening Post, and it didn't cater to elites. No, the Sun was for the working class, cheap, sensational, and full of city gossip. It was America's first successful penny press paper, and it needed a hit. Enter Richard Adams Locke, a writer with a taste for satire and a sharp pen. Locke cooked up an idea so absurd it just might work. Fabricate an entire series of astronomical discoveries, attribute them to the renowned British scientist Sir John Herschel, and make them sound just plausible enough to pass. To sell the ruse, the Sun claimed the discoveries came from the Edinburgh Journal of Science, a publication no one in New York could easily verify because it had actually ceased publication years earlier. Perfect cover. The articles described Herschel's fictional telescope as a behemoth, 25 feet long, using advanced lenses to peer deep into lunar life. It sounded like science fiction, except no one had coined that term yet. Day by day, the lunar world came into focus, at least according to the Sun. Readers were captivated. The first articles described strange geological features, towering amethyst crystals, glowing beaches, and massive trees shaped like palm and pine hybrids. But that was just the appetizer. Soon came animals, first herds of bison-like beasts and unicorns drinking from moon lakes, then bipedal beavers building huts and cooking with fire. Yes, beavers, with thumbs. And then it escalated, the crown jewel of the discovery. A race of winged humanoids, 4 feet tall, covered in short copper-colored hair, with bat-like wings and serene faces. Dubbed Vespertilio-homo, or man-bat, they were described as peaceful, intelligent, and highly social. The articles even claimed the bat people had built temples of polished sapphire and gold and lived in perfect harmony. The lunar utopia was serene, civilized, and conveniently just out of reach. Readers were enchanted. Scientists were skeptical, but the public? They were completely hooked. Circulation soared, and the Sun became the hottest paper in New York. At the center of the hoax stood Richard Adams Locke, a well-educated journalist and former editor of the New York Mirror. He wasn't just some opportunistic hack. Locke had a purpose. He claimed years later that the entire series was meant to satirize gullible religious literalists and pseudoscientific theories of life on other planets. But if that was the case, the satire was a little too subtle. Locke never labeled the pieces as fiction. Instead, he used dense scientific jargon, sprinkled with enough real names and plausible astronomy to pass a casual sniff test. He even included fake diagrams and faux academic language, making the whole thing feel official. What Locke didn't expect was how seriously people would take it. educated readers, clergy, and even scientists were taken in. Only a few skeptics, including rival newspaper editors, began to raise doubts, but by then, the Sun was printing tens of thousands of copies daily. Whether Locke intended it or not, he had done something extraordinary. He'd turned the moon into front-page news. The bubble couldn't last forever. While much of the public remained enchanted by tales of bat people and lunar unicorns, skeptics started poking holes. For one, no one could find the original source, the supposed Edinburgh Journal of Science article. That journal had gone belly up years earlier. Then came the scientists. Several prominent astronomers, including some in Europe, began asking awkward questions. Why hadn't Sir John Herschel himself confirmed any of this? Why wasn't it reported in British journals? And what kind of telescope could resolve facial features from nearly 240,000 miles away? Herschel, busy at his actual observatory in South Africa, was unaware his name was being used to promote Batmen. When he finally heard about it, he was reportedly amused, then irritated. He had made real observations of stars and nebulae, not lunar jungle societies. Eventually, the Sun admitted the truth. It was all fiction, but there was no formal retraction, no apology, and perhaps strangest of all, the public didn't seem to care. The story had already taken on a life of its own. When the Sun finally admitted the story was a fabrication, you'd expect outrage, embarrassed readers, cancelled subscriptions, maybe even a mob outside the printing office. Nope. Instead, people laughed. Many shrugged it off as good entertainment. Some insisted they'd known it was fake all along. Others refused to believe the retraction at all. The story had been so vivid, so compelling, that for many it had become emotionally true, even if scientifically false. In fact, the Sun saw its readership grow, not shrink. The paper had pulled off the most successful publicity stunt in early American media history. Competing newspapers tried, and mostly failed, to copy the formula. The hoax revealed something telling. People didn't just want facts. They wanted wonder, awe, mystery, and Locke's moon was bursting with it. Even decades later, some people still believed. The story resurfaced in books, lectures, and even parlor conversations long after it had been debunked. The hoax hadn't just fooled people, it had enchanted them. And once enchantment sets in, it's not so easily undone. But the Great Moon Hoax didn't just fade into obscurity, it changed journalism, setting a precedent for sensationalism, fake news, and the fine art of getting people to believe the unbelievable, especially if it sold papers. In many ways, the Sun helped pioneer the age of mass media manipulation. It proved that stories didn't need to be true, they just needed to be believable enough, wrapped in a coating of science and wonder. Locke's lunar tale also inspired early science fiction writers, including Edgar Allan Poe and Jules Verne. Poe, in fact, was furious. He'd published a short story about a balloon trip to the moon just weeks earlier, and the Sun had upstaged him by treating fantasy as fact. Today, the hoax is studied in journalism schools and history courses as an early example of media literacy gone missing. But even now, it's hard not to admire the audacity. One writer, a fake telescope, and a vanished journal managed to convince thousands that civilization existed on the moon, and for a while, they believed it. So what do we make of it? A forgotten newspaper, a clever writer, and a sky full of imaginary bat people? It sounds absurd now, but in 1835 it worked, and maybe that tells us more about us than it does about the moon. The Great Moon Hoax wasn't just a prank, it was a mirror, reflecting our deep hunger for wonder and our willingness to suspend disbelief if the story's good enough. That need hasn't gone away. We still chase headlines, fall for clickbait, and debate half-truths like they're gospel. Maybe the only thing that's changed is the delivery system. In a world where facts often fight for oxygen, the moon hoax reminds us that truth can be stranger than fiction, but fiction is often just more fun. Thanks for watching Wyrd History. If you liked this episode, consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing, and telling your lunar colony about us. Until next time, keep your telescopes pointed skyward and your skepticism intact, because some stories are just too weird to be true.